Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Laura Skinner, and in each episode, we'll uncover the stories behind successful startups, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future expansion. Today, we're excited to have Brendan, the founder of Simple Scaling. Brendan will be sharing more about his founding story and, of course, giving us a glimpse into their plans for future growth. So let's jump right in and welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you so much, Laura. Thank you. Delighted to be here.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited for this one. And it's going to be great accent because 99.9% is just Americans and me. This will be a great break in the role of
I hope your listeners can understand me then. I will try
Yeah, I
and
know,
slow
actually,
things down and be clear with my pronunciation.
that's true. Awesome. So take us back to the beginning. A, what inspired you to start, but also for our listeners, what do you solve within the marketplace?
Yeah, really important to give context. So prior to founding Simple Scaling along with my co-founder Claire back in 2020, I was the CEO of a business, an engineering business for 13 years. I was in the business for about 17 years, joined the business as finance director. Off the back of actually being in a business where I was the financial controller back in my 20s. It was a
Wow.
technology business during the dot-com boom and bust. You're far too young to remember that. But that was a wonderful scaling journey before scaling was ever a thing, before it even entered our business lexicons. I was invited to have a conversation with the founder of this small engineering company in Northern Ireland. It was in a business park. It had 15 people, £3 million in revenue, and
Oh,
85% of the business came from Ireland at that point. The founder had aspirations to grow the business, didn't
yeah.
want to do all of what's involved in the CEO role, wanted to focus on product development, and he also enjoyed the sales piece but didn't want to do anything in between. So I became a shareholder of that business. I became the CEO shortly after, and we took that business from 3 million to 100 million revenue. We set up offices in 6 continents. We scaled it from 15 people to 700 people, and we became number 1 in the world in our category. Now, I share that because I was caught in the bubble of this business. My life was completely consumed, and I thought everyone was doing this. So I sold my shares back in 2019, and I was starting to reflect on what I would do next. Began to research the small to medium-sized enterprise landscape, and it turns out that less than 1% of small to medium-sized enterprises ever achieve scale. And I thought, that is so incredibly sad. Now, I just want to give your listeners a little bit more context just to layer up on this. Why are SMEs important to our society? Why are they important from an
Yeah.
economic perspective? The big 7 get a lot of the headlines. The Amazons, the Googles, the Teslas of this world, they dominate the headlines. But the reality is more than 90% of businesses by volume are small to medium-sized enterprises. In fact, in the UK, more than 99% of businesses by volume are small to medium-sized enterprises. And more than 70% of people that work in the workforce are working for SMEs. So these SMEs play a huge part in our communities, in our society, and economies at large. We don't have statistics for the US, but there's a wonderful institute called the Scale Up Institute here in the UK, and they have concluded that there are 5.7 million small to medium-sized enterprises in the UK. They're contributing 2.3 trillion pounds worth of revenue to the UK economy. But what's really interesting is that 1.3 trillion of that is coming from less than 26,000 SMEs who are scale-ups. So that's a little bit of context. I then thought that there is a huge problem here to solve. How do we
100%.
turn the dial? How do we turn the needle on moving that 26,000, even by a magnitude of a few thousand, would have a huge ripple effect on those organizations, on their communities, on society, and the economy at large. So together with my co-author and co-founder Claire, we established Simple Scaling. Our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. I'll let you jump in there, Laura.
No, I just think what you're doing is incredible because I've been part of two scale-ups before, and I don't think people realize A, how much it adds to the economy, but also B, how easy it is to fail, and also how easy it is to not fail. So like the ability to actually just know what you're sharing can prevent so many businesses from fail, and that knock-on effect is going to be huge. So I love what you're doing. So how long have you actually, since you started this?
And let me just make a point to your point. A lot of leaders who found a business, who start a business, if they seek third-party investment, external investment, they're assumed by the investors to be competent CEOs and to be competent in scaling. And I don't know about you, Laura, but I have met many CEOs, hundreds and hundreds. None of them have ever went to CEO school. None of them have ever went to scaling school, but yet investors expect them to be both effective and competent CEOs and to be proficient at scaling a business. And clearly, in terms of the problem that we're solving for, the data, the facts are that less than 1% of small and medium-sized enterprises ever achieve scale. So just that's the issue here at play. And what I wanted to do, because whenever I became CEO of the business, again, I didn't go to CEO scaling school. I had a background in finance, but my eyes were and my hands were all over the business. But I started to think about, and I'm a voracious reader, and I plague anyone who will actually give me time and who has been on the journey before, and piece this together in terms of what is the algorithm, what is the formula for success, and without actually having any narrative around it back then, what turned out to be what we now call our 10 principle ScaleX framework was essentially the formula which we applied to become a successful scale up. So we founded the business in 2020, Laura, anchored on a purpose to free leaders from business limiting fears and to pursue their vision to inspire, connect, enable millions of ambitious leaders of SMEs to scale with purpose.
It's insane, isn't it? It's ultimately, like, in the most simplest way, just a pure knowledge gap. No one's actually been educated to do this role. You don't go and get educated and learn how to be a CEO. So there's just an actual knowledge gap in like your brain to execution. And if you can close that gap, the knock-on effect that's going to have for businesses and society is huge.
Laura, 100%. So there's two issues at play here. One is ignorance. They simply don't know how. So they'll drag this business to the level of their incompetence. Really, they'll reach the ceiling where they cannot kick, scream, push, drag, pull this any further. So they don't know what they don't know, which is absolutely fair. So ignorance is a big piece. That knowledge piece is huge. And then there's the other side of that, which is the fear of letting go, the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, the fear of change. So we will, of course, intellectualize that as other things, but you've both the ignorance piece and you've the fear piece, which culminates in 99% of those businesses not achieving scale. So our ecosystem is there to support both in the knowledge piece and the mindset piece, or what we refer to as psyche.
I love it so much. So how have you taken this to market, right? What has been your strategy? How have you actually got in front of these businesses? Because people need to know that it's out there and they can get the support, right?
Yes. So all good founders, you become the head of sales, the chief revenue officer. So I was the chief revenue officer for a number of years. Essentially, when I retired from the previous business, people were approaching me, which was very flattering, to support their businesses, to coach them. I was invited on to a number of boards, which again, all very flattering. As I'm continuing to work out what is it that I want to do and what's the best way to leverage my time to serve as many people as I can. So when we launched our book, we created a 12-month program, which is coaching on the 10 principles. I essentially, through my network in that initial couple of years, we were able to fill the first year a cohort of 12, which is the maximum size we take in our cohorts. The second, we
Nice.
ran two cohorts side by side. And then in
Wow.
the third year, we became a little bit more proficient in the lead generation side. I host I began hosting the ScaleX Insider podcast, which helped
Nice.
develop our brand, which got the Simple Scaling name out there. Then
Nice.
we have begun to launch various campaigns across social media. We have a wonderful marketing exec who is literally through trial and error testing the various campaigns,
Nice.
typically through Meta, to see, okay, we have lead generation system that's about testing campaigns,
Nice.
nurturing people along a journey, typically through emails, essentially getting them into our community and then taking them on that nurturing journey.
I love that so much. So where, and it's interesting you're using Meta, I want to circle back to that. Where would you say your biggest bottlenecks are right now when it comes to that whole go-to-market side? Is it on getting predictability at the top of the funnel, or is it more on like sales execution and scaling this? Like, where would you say within your business right now is that bottleneck?
It's both. So we have developed only in recent months a sales playbook.
Nice, well
Now,
done.
at the moment, in terms of the execution, we will launch campaigns. We will monitor for kind of people hand raising, let's say, who register for our newsletters, register
Right.
for the podcast, and start to interact with our material and take them on a journey. We have a number of tools which gives them value. And I recall interviewing Stephen Bartlett. He talks about the importance of giving value for free. So the value for free here is the podcast, for example. And there's more than 200 hours of interviews with people who have scaled significant multi-billion dollar businesses, who have written about scaling, who have our thought leaders in relation to scaling. So there's huge value there. Then we have the book. So if people are engaged with that, they can spend 15 quid on the book, and essentially that is the handbook to scale. If they're interested in that, then likely then they will start to interact with some of the free tools that we have on our website. So we've got our insights tool delivered off the Score app platform, where we invite people to take a quiz, which essentially gives them a report back to see where they're very effective in relation to the 10 principles of scaling, where they're effective and where there are some gaps.
Cool.
And with that, then they have the option to book what we call a scaling discovery call. And if that's only a 15-minute call, and if they pass that, if they're fit our ideal client profile, then they will be invited to participate in a scaling strategy call with myself. So to your question, where's the bottleneck at the moment? At this moment in time, in terms of sales execution, I am still involved in those scaling strategy calls, and we want to get to a place where I'm not involved in those at all. We have someone who hosts the sales discovery calls, which at least provides a qualification there in terms of the sales execution piece. And from a lead generation piece, we're trialing lots of different campaigns across the various social media platforms. Did that answer your question?
Totally. I love it. I could unpack so much. I just love this whole go-to-market chat, honestly. It's cool that you've interviewed Stephen Bartlett. We've got our CEO speaking with him at an event they're coming over from Arizona in London in 2, 3 weeks. So I'll actually meet him there, which I'm super excited about because I
Great.
follow him so much. But yeah, he'll be speaking alongside our CEOs. So they get to take the stage together. So I feel quite lucky to be able to watch him talk really through work. So, in terms of the predictability at the top of the funnel, so you're setting up, you're leveraging Meta. Let's just loop back to this. And then are you going to leverage Meta so the call to action is straight into speaking with a sales rep to qualify for you? Or are you leveraging Meta so the call to action is to go through, buy the book or digest free content? Or like, what's that strategy for you guys? I'm super intrigued.
Yes, the call to action is to book a scaling discovery call a
Okay, nice.
triage call. So that's what we want people to do. Sorry, prior to that, let me just kind of prefix that. It's Take Our Insights, ScaleX Insights quiz. And when they take that, then we make it very easy to book scaling discovery call. That then, all of this is automated such that it comes in. We use Pipedrive as our CRM. This triggers then a series of nurturing emails to take them on a
Nice.
journey.
And then just going back to what you said before about the capacity of 12, does that mean that you have a capacity bottleneck in the sense that if you filled your calendar up with like qualified leads, for example, would you be able to max out at 12 for that period of time until you were actually scalable yourself?
Yeah, again, it's the classic founder-led company issue.
My
The more
favorite.
ultimately, the more valuable you are to the company, the less value the company has.
Yeah, absolutely.
So right now, I am on a journey to extract myself from as many different functions of the business as I can, both in terms of the sales execution, and we're recruiting for a head of business development, a head of growth and impact, as we'll term it, to lead business development right across the business. And also we are currently training ScaleX coaches. We're actually launching our program for the first time outside of Northern Ireland in London. So I'm not sure when this podcast is released, but we had our first breakfast event last week, which was very successful. We're hosting another one now next month, and we will be launching our first cohort of 12 ambitious leaders who have aspiration to scale. We'll be launching our 12-month program in June, which will be hosted by our trained ScaleX coaches. So this is right now, I'm the bottleneck, both in terms of the sales execution and the actual delivery of the program. And we're working in the background. We have a wonderful COO working in the background to remove me from both of those pieces.
So is the goal to have multiple different coaches running these 12-month programs for 12 people, that there's no capacity issue, you can have as many as these cohorts of 12 as possible?
That would be the ultimate aim, that we have enough capacity within our coaching team always to keep ahead of the demand for the actual ScaleX Accelerator 12-month program itself. And prior to that, because the program is a 12-month program, it's immersive, it's in person, there is an investment in that program.
Oh, cool.
For those who are not quite ready to step into the program, into the actual ScaleX Accelerator 12-month program, and typically are less than 2 million revenue, between 750 and 2 million revenue. And again, we're not hard and fast in this, because if it's 2 million ARR in your technology company, that's very different from 2 million annual revenue in a manufacturing company. So I'm careful with these numbers, but you've got to throw something out there in terms of just broad criteria. But we have a platform which we have launched, our ScaleX Elevate program, which is an evergreen program, which is self-paced learning to allow people to, regardless of where they are across the globe, to actually be coached on our 10 principles beyond the book. And we are delivering that off the back of a platform called Circle. So
That's amazing. And then within that, I know you said evergreen, so I'm just making sure. Do you actually can they opt for one-to-one coaching or group coaching within that? Or is that simply just evergreen? This is your content, it's in digestible chunks, this is what you get.
it's a great question. It's self-paced, but they will receive group coaching via what we call our weekly jam.
Amazing. And then
So
who's closing that?
So at the moment, our COO, David, is actually hosting the weekly jams, and he's managing our ScaleX Elevate platform, our ScaleX Elevate program, along with our team there, wonderful team that sits in the background in terms of managing the content.
I literally don't think I've ever aligned with anyone doing something more than what you're doing. This is awesome. So where are the goals apart from like capacity? Do you just want to take this as far as you can? Because in basically in adversity, that impacts more businesses if you can impact more people, right?
It's exactly that.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I would within the next decade, I would love to see us with 100 coaches
It's amazing.
delivering programs, the ScaleX Accelerator program, right across the immersive in-person program, right across the globe, from North America, South America, Australia, everywhere in between, and build this incredible community of aspirational scalers in our digital platform, in our digital community. So that would be a global community of people who all have aspirations to scale. So if you think of it, Laura, whenever I was scaling, it sounds ridiculous to say, but when you're leading a team of 700 people, that it's lonely because you live a lot of the time in your own head. You have a role to play. I think of CEO as not chief executive officer, but the chief energy officer. So
Yeah,
it's incumbent on you every day to show up,
it's hard.
understanding that you're in service of these people. So that requires you to actually become incredibly aware about how you're showing up, how you're behaving, what you're saying. And so you're spending a lot of time in your own head in terms of ensuring that actually you're not allowing emotion to take over in terms of the challenges, maybe what has happened at home before you've left for work that morning, all of those things. So I never had a community. What I want to do here, what we want to do is build that
I
community.
love it.
Yeah.
I've got so many really close friends of mine that are founders, and especially because obviously you remember, but that height of tech boom where like in 2000, I can't even speak today, 2020, 21, 22, 20, even 23, where it was just like burn as much cash as possible. And then honestly, overnight, it was just like, whoa. And it's just like founders in that era, because that's like my age group of my generation. I've witnessed the most extroverted, like chief energy officers, as you call them, go through actual like mental breakdowns because the pivot was just crazy. And I can't even imagine how much of a community would have been able to help them, because even having someone in the same scenario as you makes everything so much different.
100%. If you take the stats, so less than 1% are actually achieving scale. You walk into a room of 100 SMEs, you are the only one who is scaling. So when you start to go around the room and speak to people about your vision for the future, about what you want to do globally, but the big problem that you're trying to solve, people will look at you and go, "You are mad.
Yeah,
Why are you
literally.
doing that?" And so if you're taking that in from 99 people and you're the only one, then you'll start to actually believe, yeah,
Absolutely.
maybe this isn't right. You need to get into a room of other like-minded people. I always say, I recall years ago booking a triathlon before I could swim. And that was I booked the triathlon and said, okay, now I've got to swim. So that was the goal. That was the catalyst for actually
That's
going
what
and
I
getting.
do.
There we
I
go.
literally booked like a high rocks competition before I'd even trained, to force myself to train
But
because it's booked.
well, I hope you didn't do what I did, which was buy a DVD off the internet, stick it into my laptop, lie on the couch in an evening, practice swim strokes, and then go into the pool in the morning, try and simulate those. It was only whenever I joined a triathlon club that my swimming just took off, my cycling took off, and my running took off. And what I'm trying to do here, using that analogy, is actually
Love.
create a scaling club, a
Amazing.
club of people who are championing, cheerleading one another, and saying, you know what, nobody's in competition with one another. We're all going to lift each other up. The rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah.
Let's lift everyone else up here within this community. We're doing something bold. We're doing something ambitious. We're doing something exceptional. Let's do it together and support each other on this journey. So that's what I want to do.
I love it so much. I'm honestly so aligned. It's like giving me so much energy, just this conversation. But before we wrap, just for our listeners, as this will be hyper valuable based on your experience alone, what have been like what you wish you knew, or like key lessons learned, even from just starting this scale up, right? Even from 2020, like you will have made mistakes, of course. So like where are those lessons, and what can you share with our listeners that can be like a valuable takeaway just before we wrap?
I know people will say the two most important words in your scaling journey, especially as a founder, is letting go. Let go. When you found a company, you have your hands in every part of the business. You've created this baby. You've helped birth this baby. You've been part of the upbringing of this baby. You've watched every step. And whilst intellectually, cognitively, we kind of go, okay, yeah, I know it makes sense for me not to continue to try and do everything because you're so emotionally entwined. And often your identity becomes literally indistinguishable from this business. The letting go piece, no matter how many times you hear that, whenever it comes to it, is so incredibly difficult. It's entrusting in great people, inspire great people with an incredible vision, and support them in them creating a plan to execute, and just let go, step back. And it's the difference between a kind of, let's stay on the sporting analogy for a moment. You mentioned your brother's a rugby player. Now, when it comes to the end of your brother's rugby career, maybe he'll step into coaching. The urge when you're outside of that white line, with outside the boundary of play, to want to run in and catch the ball as it's coming down is so strong that you literally shoulder your own people out of the way, and you're supposed to be the coach just to get to that ball. And letting go in the sporting context, if you think this is not about watching your team that you're coaching from the confines of your living room at home on television, it means being there right beside the play, but don't step over the line to try and catch the ball that you've now delegated to them, and your coaching supporting them to do.
I love it. I honestly love it. And I love tying anything back to sport because I just think it makes it so easy to actually understand, because I so believe that scaling a business is literally like being a professional athlete. In terms of the discipline and the mindset and
100%.
The ability to go to the gym, delayed gratitude, all that kind of stuff. Like the way me and my brother live our lives couldn't be more similar to anyone else I know, and he's my brother. But any of my friends, any of family members, like I don't live a more similar life than I do to my brother, which is just wild. So I think that's super helpful, and it's super, you've got to delegate and you've got to let go, but it's people's babies.
It is, and this is where we continue to leverage the sporting analogy. We don't bat an eyelid whenever a sports star mentions and credits their coach. They'll talk about their coach. We know who their coach is. Coaching is just synonymous with sport. But for some reason, leaders of scaling businesses are still resistant or reluctant in some way, maybe arrogant, to actually say, you know what, I feel a coach would be wonderful now, given where we are. You cannot read the label of the jam jar when you're inside the jar. And having that coach to help heighten your awareness where you're getting involved, where you're micromanaging, where your actions are impeding this scaling journey is so critically important, which is why I urge, if people take anything out of this, reflect on the power of getting a coach. Because just to wrap up, Laura, and finish on that, if Rory McIlroy misses the final putt in Augusta, poor Rory mightn't pick up his £1 million check, and poor Rory, that's rough for Rory. Maybe his caddy doesn't get the bonus. You make the wrong decision in business, and let's say you have 50 people, which is the average scaling company has just less than 100 people. So let's use that, the average scaling company. Let's say those 100 people all have a partner. Now there's 200 people impacted by your decision. Let's say half of them have kids. Now there's 250 people impacted by your decision, just directly. Now let's say they have a subcontractor network of another 100 people within their supply chain and kind of different stakeholders. Like, we're talking very quickly hundreds and hundreds of people who are impacted by the decisions that you make every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year in the context of this scaling journey. Don't do it alone.
I honestly, what a way to wrap. It's just insane. I love it so much. This has been awesome. So that does wrap up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. I want to thank Brendan for sharing his incredible journey and insights with us today. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, do not forget to subscribe to Founders Future via wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io, where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their sales through world-class marketing systems. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.